Stand together in the ocean, held together in a moment. Forget the weather, made the sand out of snow. Sand out of snow.
So, welcome back to the 98th episode of the Sayin Sutton podcast.
Is it the 99th?
Great start. The 99th. Wow.
Fucking amateur.
99.
Amateur hour.
I know, right? We've got Connor Jennings here to help me out for whenever I make mistakes about my own projects.
That's all I'm here for.
Thank you very much. What's my night called again? Is it called Comedy Bank?
I don't know. I don't pay attention, to be honest.
I knew it. I mean, I gave you a spot, but, you know, whatever. So we've got Connor Jennings here back for episode 99. And you've just come back into Manchester not long ago.
Yes.
How long ago was that now?
A month and a half.
Okay.
And I'm here for about another 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn.
So 2 weeks on Thursday just gone. So it's, about 1.5 now, to be honest.
Ah, shit. So I'm glad we're getting this in there. Because I remember when you arrived, I was told by Pete, who went to a comedy night, that you kind of just, hey, and turned up. And it was kind of a surprise to everyone.
Yeah, some people knew. A lot of people knew that I was going to be arriving at some point in the summer,
right.
But I love a bit of
Same.
surprise. I'm a sucker for
just
it.
Like, oh, me.
I guess it's in some way it's a little bit egotistical to expect people to give a fuck.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you guys are all my friends and stuff.
Exactly.
But it's funny to just show up at a night and be like, "It's me," and some people didn't recognize me.
Oh yeah, just because of the hair.
Yeah, I was. The long hair is part of it, but Annabelle Devi didn't recognize me until she started having a conversation with me, and then she heard my voice and she was like, oh my god, it's Connor.
Yes. I
Yes.
thought I was just talking to a
Tis
stranger. Because the thing about that is, like, we think that if we're going to turn up and surprise people, like, in your head you're like, the gift to you lot is me, like that, like, and I've definitely done it before. It's like they're going to be so excited when they get their present. Me. It is an odd one, but I've definitely done it. We're all sucker for it.
Fortunately, it did go that way.
That's good then.
So it was a fun experience.
Yeah, nice. And when you first arrived, so you'd arrived, I'd been told you were back, and then you messaged me and said, let's hang out. We caught up, but I remember you saying right at the beginning of you getting here, like, how long you were here for, and it felt like it was ages away, and it's almost done now, man.
I did think 3 months when I first got here, but then I brought it down to about 2.
So it's the beginning of August you think you're getting out of here?
July 23rd, I think, is the day.
That's not long at all.
Not long at all.
So before you leave Manchester for good, because I know where you're going to Guatemala. Oh, shit, was I supposed to tell everyone that?
It's a secret, Phill.
Damn it. So is there anything you want to get done before you're here, or are you kind of just happy?
I'm just hanging out with
Hanging
people,
out.
to be honest. I had a couple of sets at Castlefield, but they got cancelled because it was today. And we're about to win or lose the final. So
True.
When this is released, people will know.
Oh yeah.
But
so commiserations.
No one's going to go watch open mic comedy whilst England are in a final, so that got cancelled. I'm just hanging out and.
I'm even worried about tomorrow night with doing comedy vault tomorrow night, because it's like, will people be, if it's a win, will people just be bursting in the room with like white, like an England flag on their face, just screaming? Like, will the party just continue all week? Or will it be like people will be there and they're like, what are you laughing at? And like flipping tables and stuff.
I think your biggest risk is that people just be too hungover to
turn up,
to give a fuck.
100%, yeah.
I don't think that there'll be a week-long chaotic riot party.
That's all I'm
no
imagining.
one goes to work.
That's really all I'm imagining. Because I've not really watched the games, really, and I know that's nowadays saying that is like blasphemy in the 1800s. Not that it's relevant now, blasphemy. Jesus Christ. I've not really watched it, but I have just seen the aftermath of it. Like, I've rode home from work on my bike at like 10 at night, and then the last game, the semi-final, the whistle blew as I went past this pub, and everyone's just going nuts. And then as I'm getting home closer and closer to Manchester, there's just people that are coming out going, coming home,
Yeah.
coming home, and there's just women going like, football, come on.
Yeah.
And
It's
everyone's
like
just going nuts.
it's like an apocalypse every time
Yeah.
we win a game. It's it's so weird because in cities people do everything they can not to look at each other or talk to each other, and you're amongst the most people you probably ever will be.
Yeah.
But you have the least amount of interaction with people. Like if you're in the country, you might see someone every now and then and be like, "Hello." every
Yeah,
time you do.
100%.
But
But
so
people
you're just like, "Don't fucking look at me."
Yeah.
But when we win the football, it's like all strangers. We're all bonded. There's like euphoria. It's
people are just
it's nice to
shouting
see.
football things to each other.
And I'm like,
Yeah, I heard guys
Goals.
having an argument. Yeah, girls and goals. I heard some guys having an argument outside the day after the night of the semi-final, and it was like maybe 1 a.m, and there's some shutters out there. So I heard someone punch the shutters, and a guy like arguing. Then I heard one of the guys go, "Look, pal, I'm telling you, it's coming home. Are you saying it's not coming home?" And like that was the argument, that he was like, "Are you fucking trying to tell me that it isn't coming home? How dare you say that? Did you just say it's coming home in Italian?" Yeah, so it has been nuts. But speaking of the apocalypse, no, that's not how we'll segue into this. So you've only done a couple of sets in Manchester.
Yeah, I've only done like 4, I think. If that.
And at the moment, it's like for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Which is, to me and a lot of other people, it's a big shame, because I really do like your comedy, and
thanks.
and watching the little clips that I took from Comedy Vault last week to make the promo video of like, just even when it's on mute and I'm putting some music over it, like your stage presence and stuff, the way you move around the stage and act the things out really well, because the jokes are solid, and I'm trying to get there. Like, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I'm like, I'll have 20 ideas and I know that only 3 of them are actually worth doing. Whereas it used to be like, let's make a 5-minute set, and there's loads of filler tracks on the album in a way.
Yeah.
Like, there's like, I'll stuff that in there because it just makes sense to go from one thing to another. So I'm only at the point now where I'm like writing jokes that I really like, but there's a whole element of like, act them out more, move around the stage more, do better voices and things like that. And it will be a shame to see you stop doing it, like if that was the case. So you're looking at it as a hobby, but in a way. Why don't you explain a bit more into that?
So, so it would be inaccurate for me to say that I'm never going to do stand-up again today. In fact, I got some competitions later on in the year that I'm in Leicester Square, Comedian of the Year, and a comp called 2 North Down. That's both in London. Plus, I imagine I'll do sets here and there. But what I'm retiring from, although it's not like I was making any money from it, is the life of like writing every day and doing 4 sets a week and like living and breathing stand up, because I have become since Corona started, I've become more, I'm inclined to say pessimistic about the future, but now I just believe it's realistic about the future.
Okay.
And I think that if I want to be able to weather whatever is about to happen in the world over the next 20, 30, 40 years, it's probably best for me to position myself where I have practical skills and maybe money. That would be great.
Like, you'd rather be, like, your priorities nowadays are like, say 10 years ago you could have gone, I'll do stand up because there doesn't seem to be this urgent, that's not the right word, this kind of like, things seem to be coming to a head in a way, and like things are on the precipice of something. We'll go into more of what that is. But say 10 years ago, you could have gone into it going, well, I can make this my lifestyle, but you started out like that, and then you've read more and you've researched more and you've become more aware of what's going on in the world, to the point where you're like, that's just not a priority anymore. Stand-up isn't a priority anymore.
To me, it only makes sense to try and build a long-lasting career for myself in stand-up comedy in a world where there exists stand-up comedy and the infrastructure to maintain that sort of career for the rest of my life. And no one really knows what will happen in the future, but I think that we can't sit back like people could in the past and just assume that everything will be fine when there's pretty dire predictions about what, say, the climate will look like or resource scarcity will look like by 2050. I mean, I'm going to be 54 then.
Right.
So I think that we're going to see a lot of pretty harsh, grim futures come to reality. And I don't want my only skill set to be like, oh, I've got a really great type 5.
Yeah, well, I guess by the time you're 54, you would want to be further than a type 5, but
type 10.
Yeah, at least 8. But no, okay then. So yeah, but I've had that. When I was younger, and I like was more aware of like. I was more like, oh, I want to. I don't know. You kind of you grow up into an adult, and you go like you start to be more aware of what's going on in the world around you. And I often find that a lot of people who get into, you aren't one of these people. I don't consider you as one of these people anyway. I'm not putting you in this column, but there are people who like in their early 20s, like they start getting into activism and they start getting into politics and things like that. And I often find that those same people that I did that with, and I only dip my toe in it a little bit, like change the way I ate or change the like where I put my money and things like that, or like where I would choose to go or what I'd be part of and stuff like that. And I find that a lot of people around that time who were very much into it, as they've grown up, they've kind of, it's almost like a more, not realistic, more like they're going, I don't know. I think to be honest, I think just regular life gets in the way of all this ambition you have when you're younger. So I wouldn't consider that's what you're doing at the moment. Yours is more like you have come to learn through like almost accidentally. You've gone like, oh, I have this knowledge now, so I have to. Rather than it be like, oh, it's activism. It's I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You're more like I see where things are going. So I'm going to be prepared in a way.
Yeah, it's not so much that I'm trying to fix the world, although I do,
want to contribute.
I don't think I'm just like, yeah, fuck it, drive an SUV, it's all fucked anyway. Like, I'm vegan, like, and environmentalism is part of that, and I don't fly, and I'm not saying that it is our responsibility. Obviously, corporations do most of the damage, but I'm not saying that activism doesn't have a place. But most of my focus is on seeing that I'm quite woefully unprepared for, if anything, instead of like, oh, I was an activist and then real life got in the way, it's more like I've had this wild comedy life and I'm choosing to go for the regular life because I'm like, I need to have some stability and not.
So you're 25 now?
Yeah.
35 for you. Are you in like a house in kind of like out in the sticks and you've got a dog and you know how to put your car together, you know how to sustain your own home? Is that kind of like the way you're looking at it?
Yeah, I'm not the type of person that is like trying to build a bunker and fill it with
bunker, but
tin cans or whatever. But my dream now is to have a place myself where I can grow some of my own food, provide my own electricity, not be on the grid, and also have a community around me, because cities are quite hard to build any community resilience. Everyone's sort of like out for themselves, whereas if you're out somewhere a little bit more rural, then you can help each other out a bit.
True, yeah. And if you're the one growing food, someone else is doing, I fix the cars, I do this, whatever.
Yeah.
See what you mean?
So hopefully by the time I'm 35, I don't necessarily think that I'll need it by the time that I'm 35.
Right.
But I'm like trying to.
What do you mean by that? You don't think you'll need it?
I don't think that I don't think that supermarkets won't have food in them.
Right, that's right. It's still quite some time, but that is a prediction. Well, not even a prediction you have, but
I think it's a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility. And what's the reason for that coming?
I mean,
just like self-checkouts and AI. Is that what it is?
Nah, I mean, there's
McDonald's takes over everything.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everything's gonna be Big Mac within 10 years. It's quite hard to. Oh my God, Nick!
Oh my goodness!
Fucking hell! We're doing something here.
Exactly, Jesus, man! I bet you didn't know Nick was in the room. I thought it was like some sort of like post-apocalyptic training video, and he was like behind the camera, like shit. Right, so you have to build your own bunker, and
What was I saying?
What were we saying, Nick?
unfortunately, we're kind of spoilt for choice when it comes to potentially civilization-ending threats.
Okay.
And the small ones that people don't really talk about, like antibiotic resistance, or even AI isn't taking that seriously.
What's antibiotic resistance?
So, antibiotics are used for bacterial infections.
Like Actimel?
No, it's like penicillin. You serious?
No. Obviously not. They're probiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, penicillin. Yeah.
Yeah,
There will be none of that.
So it's not that the antibiotics are going
Told you
away.
I'm dumb.
It's that bacteria is evolving to become more resistant to our drugs. So old infections that aren't a big deal anymore suddenly become...
There'll be tuberculosis will be back, and the Black Plague.
I don't know if that's a bacterial infection, but if it is, then
okay.
Yes, you would now die from TB.
Because there's been so much, like, we've been coasting on this, like, medicine works for so long that the bacteria is going, I know what you're doing here with your penicillin. I'm going to evolve.
Yeah, we're killing off the weak bacteria, but the resistant ones stay alive.
Right.
And then they reproduce, and then all the bacteria is resistant. And people are already dying of antibiotic resistance. It's not a huge amount,
right? But that's something that is coming along, and it's like,
yes, that's a small concern.
Right.
I think obviously the big ones are climate change, and I think resource scarcity is a big one that doesn't get a lot of screen time.
Yeah, exactly. With the Suez Canal and that thing getting stuck. If there's
yeah.
any more of that, then we're going to be really fucked.
Yeah, I mean that's so supply chains are in jeopardy, largely because there's a huge energy crisis going on at the moment.
Right, yeah.
So it seems ridiculous and so obvious to say, but it's not really something you consider. But every year we aim to grow our economy, and in fact it grows exponentially. So on average the global economy grows about 3% every year, but that means that 3% this year is more than 3% last year, more than 3% the year before that, right?
Right.
So every 25 years the economy doubles, and I don't know how accurate it is to say that means that it requires twice as many resources to keep the thing ticking over.
Yeah, I see.
But obviously it means that it requires a substantial more amount of resources to keep it ticking over. So every year, humanity needs more stuff to maintain itself.
Yeah.
But there is less stuff to maintain itself.
True.
And it's just obvious that you can't grow infinitely on a planet with finite resources. True. And we will bump into a wall at some point. And the signs that we're doing that with things like soil and sand, and I think probably most importantly oil, are starting to show. And if you get to a point where it's not so much that we'd run out of oil, but it wouldn't become economically feasible to extract it anymore. Yeah. A world without oil is a disaster. It's a source of, it's a third of our energy consumption is oil. Right. So if you can't get oil anymore,
everything's comes
fuck.
to a halt. Yeah. But how let's tackle this one as the I'll play devil's advocate on this one. So what do you think the chances of we have alternative fuel sources, we have we realize that you can't keep so in my mind when you're saying some of this I'm like, well massive chains that are constantly like, they're just going, we'll just take and take and take from the resources because we make money and we just throw it out there and people eat it up. Do they not get hit first? Do the chains and stuff like that are just constantly trying to get more and more in? Because in my mind, the optimist in me wants to go, what if the electric cars become more popular? What if smaller businesses come back? What if AI is like, rather than you needing certain resources, we have AI figure out a way to do things more efficiently and stuff like that. Like that's what I'm hoping will happen in a way. And I see some things where I'm like, so Tom Scott, you know that guy on YouTube?
No.
So he's this guy in a red t-shirt. If anyone knows who he is.
He's like, I'm here in front of a pile of dead birds.
This is the biggest
Warrington
skyscraper in London. Yeah. Even though it's in Warrington and it's a pile of dead birds.
Yeah, my dad used to love that guy.
Right, yeah. So that guy. Well, he showed this place in London, was it? And it was this warehouse where they had loads of like AI robots on a grid, and they're just doing the job of a warehouse worker at like triple the speed, and it's just so accurate. Like they'll know where to drop recommended things in for each like type of customer and all this stuff. So it just made this so efficient to the point where if those jobs are filled but there's money being made from that can go back into taxes, and it can go back into giving people like a living wage and stuff, which is what I'd like to believe. But also then another part of me goes, yeah, but that makes whatever that living wage is, the rich get richer, and then they go, here's your standard, here's your crumbs, peasants, like that.
Yeah.
Like I always think that's the pessimist of me going like, yeah, but they'll still treat us like shit if they have done for 20, 30 years. So there's AI taking over things like that. And then what was the other point that I made? Alternate
electric vehicles.
Yeah, like vehicles changing, and even like, we're gonna have to start growing food differently. We're gonna have to start. Is there not? Do you not think? Do you feel optimistic in any way for people? Like, there's a guy who's like, I've made a huge net that cleans up the sea from all the plastic. It's basically a massive boat that goes across with this huge net and it collects it all up. Do you like? There's guys out there going like, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, there are technologies that I think will help us, but I'd have to go through the points that you made. So firstly, the AI automating work and becoming more efficient in a warehouse or whatever. I don't really know how that produces more iron ore or fossil fuels. Like, that still requires primary wealth that will only have less and less and less.
To what you said.
If anything, the AI producing more and more quicker would mean that we need more and more resources to keep it going. So I don't really know how that solves the problem of running out of stuff.
I think in my head, my thing was like, what if the AI figures in a more efficient way to do it than needing all these resources?
Well, have you ever heard of Jevons paradox?
I don't think I have not.
So sorry, I got beard hair in my tongue.
Get it? I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Usually your beard hairs on my tongue.
Anyway, Jevons paradox. So
that's the paradox.
It's this weird phenomenon where when technology makes something more efficient, you expect it to use less resources.
Okay.
But because of how humans are, we don't actually use it to use less resources. We use it to justify producing more. So it's kind of like cut a cake in half and you're like, sweet, now I can eat twice as much. Because
that's a good point.
So, and you can Google it, there's tons of studies on it. And renewables are a good example of this, because you think that for every watt of energy that we produce using, say, solar, you would replace a watt of energy from fossil fuels. Yeah. But actually, it's every 10 watts of renewable that we produce. So we actually replace 1 watt from fossil fuels. Okay. Replacement rate is much slower. Yeah. Because so it's not so much that renewables are replacing fossil fuels, is that we're using them in addition to the fossil fuels that we would have used anyway, because it's just more and more.
It's like, we can have more.
Yeah. So I don't have a lot of faith in efficiency either. And if someone came up with a net and said, hey, look, we found a way to clear up all the plastic in the ocean and stuff, that's great. I mean, plastic is its own huge issue. Yeah. Microplastics are a disaster for our fertility. That's a good example. And obviously for animals. But it doesn't change the fact that we only have so much oil, coal, and gas to keep us ticking over. We need a huge amount of energy to keep us going.
True.
There's you ever heard of energy returned on energy invested?
I've heard of it, but you'd have to explain
So
it.
It's a ratio which shows like for every unit of energy you spend trying to extract some energy, how much energy do you get out of it?
So it's often more energy you're putting into the thing to actually get it.
It has to be for it to be worth your time. If you get less energy out than the energy you put in trying to get it, there's no point getting it. And that's what's scary about oil. You don't need to run out of oil. You just need to get to a point where it's not worth extracting it anymore.
Right.
And in the early 1900s, the EROEI, whatever, EROI, probably easy way to say it. Of oil was 100. So for every 1 barrel of oil you spent, you'd get 100 barrels of oil out. That's where you see those pictures of like people in the 20th century where it's like just spewing oil in the fields and they're like, wee,
it's on the face,
shooting guns and shit. Because there was so much of it in America specifically. I think the first oil well was like 21 meters deep. They had to drill down. And now the Deepwater Horizon disaster that happened in 2010, they had to drill like thousands of meters deep. So the EROI of oil is under 10 now, so it's dropped considerably since we first found it. And in fact, conventional oil, which is the normal drills we see, has already peaked. We actually don't produce as much conventional oil as we did back in 2006. So it peaked.
Right.
So you think, okay, so we're now not producing as much conventional oil, but we need more oil to sustain ourselves because our economy is bigger than it was in 2006. What's filling the gap? And that's where you've seen things like fracking and shale oil come in. But now people are even saying that shale oil might have peaked, and experts tend to predict that we will hit peak total oil, conventional and unconventional, somewhere between now and latest 2040. So if you hit that peak in 2030, and then every year after that you produce less oil than the year before it, you're going down and you have nothing to replace it.
And by 2030 the economy is even bigger than it is now.
The monster will be bigger and we'll have less and less food to feed it.
Now you're speaking my language. Talk monsters and food.
So I think it's not my viewpoint isn't entirely based off of oil. I think that's just one easy to explain example of many resources that we're running short of, and there's a whole black market of sand now for concrete. And I read recently that China used as much concrete between 2011 and 2014 that America used in the whole of the 20th century. Which is like, that's how crazy big we've gotten now, is that we're just like hungry. The more we eat, the hungrier we get. And as a result, we're using up a lot of sand. So, if we run out of sand, there's no more concrete, and you can't replace infrastructure. And it's just like, there's so many plates spinning, and we haven't even spoken about climate change yet.
And as well, like, what's mad about that as well, like, just even living in the city, you're just seeing cranes everywhere and things going up constantly. Yet there is loads of places that are just dilapidated and waiting to be knocked down. And it's like, if we were in the same, this is kind of like a metaphor for the rest of, or analogy, whatever, simile, who knows? English, who knows?
Go to school.
I didn't even go to school. Okay. So, an analogy for this, I suppose, might be that if we would have put more effort into like, there's things that have been built already, let's just refurbish them and reuse them in a way. That might have been more efficient than going like, make the tallest building. Like, no, we're making the tallest building over here in Manchester. No, we've got the tallest building like that. Yet there is already so much more. That's the same in a lot of cases where it's like, you want more of this resource, but we already have a lot of it, and we should have done something about that a long time ago. But the monster keeps getting bigger, and there's less food.
I think you can see a lot of it with what we buy as well. I mean, it's not an efficient way to listen to music to buy a pair of headphones every 3 months that break. Like in the olden days, you listen to your parents, they're like, they don't build lawnmowers like they used to. It's like, they literally don't, because of planned obsolescence. They make it to break so they can sell you more. Which just uses a ridiculous amount of stuff that we don't need to use. And
also, I remember hearing this thing about like an old couple were asked how they lasted so long, like 80 years or something, like, well, maybe not that long, 70 years or something. They met when they're teenagers and they're 90 odd now. And they were like, we come from a generation where when something broke, you would just fix it. And you don't just scrap it in and move on to the next thing. And that generation were like my granddad, whenever something in the house would break, he would just put a sugar in his mouth and fucking get that here like that. Whereas nowadays, it's like, we don't like that whole thing of like, millennials aren't as good as baby boomers at fixing stuff. And it's like, because we don't need to. Like, because if we have something that's broken, there's kind of like, you don't have the tool. Like, oh well, now if this breaks, you have to have the specific tool for this particular product. You can't have a thing that fixes all of them. That's all iPhones. Like, it's got to break in 2 years so that you get the new one. And then that little square like thing is just, you throw it in the ocean, like it's done with. Whereas back in the day, it'd be like, yeah, you just rebuild, like you just fix the thing rather than chuck it out and replace it. And yeah, it's mad how we're not only, like you said, there's more and more stuff, but within that, like the more stuff we had, phones for example, they're just like, they don't want to make one that will last. It doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like we have to keep selling it and selling it and selling it, and we're trying to grow the economy so much that it's like, now we have to make the products that we're selling you break just to sell you more of them, because it's not enough that we've sold it you once.
Yeah, I think somewhere around the 80s, people cottoned on to the fact that it's not profitable to make things that you can repair and supply with parts, and they're just like, make it break after a little bit.
Yeah,
and you'll buy another one from me.
There's a light bulb this is some other YouTube video I've seen, where there's a light bulb that's been on for like 100 odd years in a fire station in America, and it's one of the first ones. They made this light bulb, and then they went, this light bulb just lasts forever, do you want it? And then they were like, wait, don't sell that, like, because once you've sold it, that's it then, like,
no more light bulb
the
sales.
business is done. Like, so don't do that. Make ones that break after a couple of years, and then people will constantly replace them. So we've gotten to the point where there is ways where we know how to, like, once you get this, you'll have it for life, you know. And people are like, yeah, but then our business will be done. And we're so driven on money and like being this entrepreneurial, like, you need to make it in business. You need money to buy that thing and buy that. We have to. It's like instilled in us to constantly be consuming or putting out products over and over. Like, gone are the days where you'd be like, there's repair stores for a thing. It's like, it's just more like, replace everything, use new stuff constantly. Yeah, that is worrying. You're making me realize that a little bit, where I'm like, oh yeah, we are in a generation now where it's like, just constantly be buying more and more and more.
Yeah, you don't recycle, you don't trade in your old phone and it actually gets recycled in a
it's just like
way. Every phone every Nokia 3310 that existed in the early noughties is in a pile somewhere in Indonesia or in the ocean or whatever. Like, it doesn't go anywhere, and the resources we use to make it, we can't get back again.
True.
So our quality of life is built on non-renewable resources that we are absorbing quicker and quicker and quicker.
And it is as well, like,
exponential as
phones is a good way of looking at it, because when they first came out and they were a Nokia 3310 or whatever, that phone would last you a long time, and it did take a couple of years for them to go, right, there's a new one like that. And whereas now it's like there's a new iPhone every year, and even the parts that you plug into it are constantly changing, to the point where you're like, not only are things getting better, but they're also shortening the amount of lifetime they have on each thing.
And they purposely update the phone so that it slows it down.
Exactly.
So you have to buy a new one.
And that's just happening every single year. It's getting to the point where I reckon it'll get to the point in a couple of years where you're like, yeah, remember every 6 months, replace your iPhone. Like, and they're even just telling you, like, it will break in 6 months. Don't forget, you must replace it. Come to the iPhone bank.
I think energy sources are a good example of those sorts of pools that we can't expect to carry on forever. But for stuff like consumer goods, first, I mean, oil is used to make a lot of anything that has plastic in it is used. Oil is used. But I mean, unless you recycle at 100%, every resource we have will be going down. Sure, we can find new deposits, but it was always there. Yeah. So the true amount of resource we have on Earth has always been going down ever since we started making stuff. And unless we start mining asteroids, which might happen, but even then you can't get everything from asteroids. Unless things lived and died on the asteroid, you can't get oil from it. Right.
And as well, like, all of these solutions of things, it is kind of just putting off the inevitable. It's like, what it is, it's like, the monster is on coke, and you're going like, I want to keep this high. Can I keep this high? And it's like, no, you have to get sober. Yeah. And it's like, get sober, monster. You'll shrink and you'll be better. And it's like, no, I want to stay this buzzed. And it's like, all right, well, coke doesn't work anymore. MDMA, and then you give it MDMA, and that's electric cars. But all it is doing is like trying to keep the monster that's growing going. Bars. But what we really need to do is go like what your plan is, where it's like, if I just live in this house and I have things where I don't have to keep buying that thing, I grow food and I cook it in my tin pan that I've had for 10 years, and I live more simply, and I don't need these resources. But you're not also sat on your lawn chair looking just across and everything's on fire, and do you not?
Well, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what will happen, especially when you include climate change in all of it as well. We are obviously one of the richest countries in the world, so whatever does happen, we will be better protected than people near the equator.
100%.
So I don't know. I'm almost certain that our lives will be harder 10 and 20 years from now than they are now. But I don't necessarily think that the government will cease to exist in 2040.
No, there'll be some.
It's not impossible by the end of the century, but I may never live to see that day.
True. And also, one of my reasons for when people ask me if I want kids, that has been a massive reason. It's like, I don't know where the world's going. Like, if the way it is now, and yes, it is better than in lots of ways, it's better than it ever has been. There's also like, it's like, yeah, but the way I see it going is, it's like, oh, everyone's accepting now gay. The word like gay isn't a thing. We're all just fluid, and everyone's just accepting now in 2040. But there's no pandas or plastic left. Like, it's just like, and we all have to ride to work on our bikes. You can't have a job more than 5 miles away because, and it's like, so the thought of having kids has always been like, I don't know what world I'm putting them into.
I think it's something that's important to consider. I absolutely don't judge anyone if they have kids. I come to the conclusion that I don't want kids either for that same reason. But I'm not, if someone says I'm pregnant, I'm not gonna be like, you fucking monster. Yeah. We're running out of this, and the globe's hot, you piece of shit.
It's like, Connor, it's yours.
Like, make some girl pregnant, I'm like, you heartless bitch.
How dare you? You should have told me.
No. So I'm not like that. But I think one thing that people should consider that they maybe don't is that when you have a kid, you focus a lot on the near future after it's born. You're like, oh, you're not going to be able to sleep very well for a year afterwards. Like, hope you've got a school nearby that you can send it to. These are the sort of things you prepare for.
But really, you want to be like, you're not going to be able to sleep very well, and you've placed them in a dying economy.
Yeah, I mean, you have to consider that a kid born now, babies we see in the street, will be alive in 2100.
Wow.
Which is, that's like crazy future stuff that it's like, 2100, that's impossible. Even though we might maybe make it, probably not.
Not me.
But, you have to ask yourself, what do you think the world will look like in 2080, 2090, 2100? Because that is a future that they will have to experience. And, you can't protect them forever. And, there's a whole bunch of philosophical arguments of like, if you don't have a kid, then they can't experience the good things. Your kid's never going to fall in love or whatever. So that's why I'm like, each to their own. But you should absolutely consider climate and all ocean acidification, biodiversity collapse, all of it. You need to keep it in mind when you're having a child.
True. And
how you raise them.
I've also looked at, whenever people have asked me why I don't want children, it's like, well, first of all, even if you think you could be, like, people are going, but you'd be a good dad. And I'm like, yeah, but not everyone has to have children. It's almost this thing that has been instilled in us, like, yeah, of course you have kids when you get older. And it's like, should we all though? Like, there is definitely enough kids. In fact, there's so many kids that there's ones that don't have parents that need them like that. And if you really care that much about having a kid, just get one of them, or get a rescue. But if, my point being, it's not necessary. And also, like you said, it's like, people don't consider enough before they have children what that actually means. It's almost, and this isn't everyone, it's all, for some people it's like, Yeah, that's the thing. Is whenever I've brought up adoption, they're like, "Yeah, but don't you want one that's like looks like you and your wife and stuff?" And you're like, "Is that not a bit selfish to be like, I just want another me like that?" And it's like, yeah, but what if the other you're like, you're sending it into this mad world where,
and you're also not saving a kid who needs your help.
Yeah,
and I mean, there's a lot to be said for the fact that if you get someone who's older, then you have less influence on how they turn out as a person.
True.
If you meet them when you're 10, then it's like, well, I missed all the formative years. So I understand why some people might be apprehensive over adoption, even though I think that it absolutely makes sense. If you have children here, you should look after them first before making more mouths to feed. And my dad was adopted, and I would like to be a dad, but if I did, I would absolutely adopt.
I've thought about this too. Should we adopt a child together?
Yeah.
I think we should. Nick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay then. Well, what we'll do, we'll make that the first little half if you fancy it.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
And moments later, we're back. Just in the little moment where we changed the cameras then and I had a piss, as I walked back in the room, you were saying it's kind of alienating to have this, not view, I would say, after listening to all this, you're a realist. I don't even know if that's a real term that people use. Perhaps it is, but I've just coined it now.
It is a common phrase, although
okay,
it's
no,
but I think it's almost a bit. I mean, I get why, because it's like it's not hoping for the best, it's not expecting the worst, it's just seeing things as they are.
Exactly.
But it's also implying that other people aren't realists. It's like you live in a fucking fantasy world. So like,
but if we all admit
I have mixed feelings on the word.
Like, I was just thinking then, whilst pissing, I was thinking, if I'm 30 now and I just rent places and I don't have any savings, then this information that you're giving me now is like, oh, maybe I should have worked towards getting a mortgage. Maybe I should have some money saved. Maybe I should have some more practical skills. But looking at my life now and putting it into perspective with this, and then you can perhaps do it with yours as well. My main skill in life is teaching swimming, and to me that's something that AI can't do, and it will be a skill that will be needed for a long time. So in a way, I feel like, you don't think so, Nick?
No, the water's going to displace soon.
Exactly. So we won't need to swim. We won't need to swim or bathe. So I kind of look at that, in a way, that at least I've got that you could probably do with having some other skills that are a little more practical if I did have to grow my own food and stuff like that, and all this kind of thing. And I have dipped my toe into that. I have Ramsel, a friend of mine, who is in the same. He has a similar look to you, but it's more like, let's all go to Bolivia and live in a commune with all the hippies. I don't know. I'm just kind of putting this too much, but he's like. He also says something about Jews and how they control Hollywood. No, that's not true. That's not true.
I thought you were real for a second. I was like, ooh.
I just like to go. I
don't like being compared to this guy.
No. I just thought I would go with. I just like whenever someone is told they're a conspiracy theorist, which I imagine even you will be saying some of this stuff. Oh, it's all conspiracies. That and you're like, I've not said anything that's conspiracy.
It's hard to not sound conspiratorial. When
exactly.
You talk about collapse.
True.
It sounds so alien to everyone, but most civilizations that ever existed have collapsed.
Yeah, exactly. And my point then was going to be like that. So I'm aware that like I have this mindset where I'm like, if everything went to shit, like at least I have something to fall back on in a way, and I've at least dipped my toe into like, oh well, I know what I would do in that scenario perhaps or whatever, but. I also am aware that by thinking that, I'll do stand-up and I'll make a decent living off that, and I'll just live and I'll do the arts and everything should be okay until I'm 70 or 80 and I die, which is what? If I'm 30 in 2020, what's by 2070, I could be like an old man. And by then, things could be very different. Yeah. But I always kind of look at it like I've been just walking around with the blinders on, just going, I don't want to, I don't want to know about that. But really, it is something you've kind of, people who are listening to this now, I'm starting to realize more and more. I'm like, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, is because when me and Nick have discussed this, Nick, I think knows what you mean and like agrees with you on a lot of these topics, but you're a bit more optimistic that things will. I don't know. Nick is optimistic about the fact that when this stuff happens, it will kind of be okay because
We'll just have to adjust.
we'll have to adjust. Yeah. And as well, a lot of the people who like X Factor and the Christmas markets, they'll just be dead anyway because they won't be able to keep up. Silver linings. So what we'll do is there'll be the world will do its own genocide of shitty people. But no, Mother Earth will do its own genocide of goblins. No, but if I'm being realistic with myself, I should. There is elements of me where I go, I don't know about having kids. I'm okay with riding a bike everywhere. That's probably the best way. I'm not going to eat meat and stuff like that. Like, I'm making my own decisions within it, but I'm not like fully invested in knowing all about it in a way. Which with you, it's like you're going to be very well prepared. I'm going to be like tagging on with someone who is. I'm probably going to ring you up in 20 years and be like, "Remember that conversation we had?
Yeah.
I'm kind of ready. Can I come to the commune?" But what was my question? Oh, so yeah, I imagine it is alienating, and but I suppose there will be a point where people are going, "You were right,"
or there'll never be a point where everyone thinks I'm right and I'm wrong, which is
hopefully
fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
That's the prime scenario for me, that I build a country house for myself somewhere and everything's fine. I just get to chill out with a dog and settle down with someone.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. It's like either way, you've still got a place. If the world goes one way or another, you're at least going to get yourself in a position where you have a nice house and a dog. Yeah,
fingers crossed. I mean, I'm years off accomplishing that. I'll have to spend many years living at home and
but 25. When I was 25, I was barely doing anything at all. So, so the fact that you're even you have the foresight to do this now. Yeah, you have the foresight.
I hope that as time goes on, people will become. It's
hard to.
I was actually having second thoughts about even doing the pod today for the sole reason that I have mixed feelings about whether or not you want to share the information. So I am someone who I just want to know what's true. I don't really care how it makes me feel. And in fact, when I started reading about this, what happened was I Googled when will Corona end?
Right.
Somewhere around summer of last year. I was like, what are the experts saying? Like, when is this shit going to wrap up? Because I'm bored. And I found myself on an article that was titled, when will we stop pretending that there won't be a climate catastrophe? Okay. And like, when are we going to accept that it's too late?
Yeah.
And that's the first time I'd ever heard anyone frame, like, obviously all the conversation about it in mainstream is saying like, oh, there's still more time and we just got to do X, Y, and Z, and nothing changes day in, day out. And once it started to dawn on me, I tried to absorb as much information as possible. But there are also people that don't want to hear about it, and then if they do hear about it, they will suddenly lose motivation to do things. So my position isn't that you shouldn't go to work, you shouldn't try to fall in love. Like, these are, if anything, following your dreams and doing what you want is more important now because you potentially have less time 100%. To do it. And I don't want people to become just sedentary and just like, fuck, it's all over or whatever, because I don't necessarily believe that life won't be worth living for the rest of my life. I just think it'll be different and it'll be hard. So I was a little bit concerned about it.
Well, I'm actually I'm realizing now I could articulate why I wanted to do this now, but I'm going to put a disclaimer at the beginning. As in, like,
I think that's a good idea.
This is why I wanted to have this conversation, and I will go into it in the disclaimer, but rather than repeat it, have it repeated now. But no, I didn't go into it for like prove me wrong or anything like that. It was more like I want to have a discussion about it, because really what it is it's not for me. It's not either of those. It's not like I said before that it's la 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 la. It isn't that really. It's like I've read about stuff in the past and I've heard about things in the past that have made me go, oh, it's bubbling there. It's just over here and it's happening. And I'm just kind of, I have to kind of I had to be selfish for a while and go like, what do I want in life? Because there was a point when I first started eating vegetarian and vegan and stuff, and trying to change the way I consume things or whatever it is, the choices I make, that I started reading so much up on stuff that I started getting like just hopeless and being like, I can't do enough. It's like there's too much, and it made me, even the news, I get very sensitive to the news, where if I see like that banner that has now come on YouTube where it's like, look, the news, and I didn't subscribe to this, it's just showing me it, and it'll sometimes be like 12 dead in freak accident, a cable car thing, coronavirus, new strain is killing us all, the world will, whatever, and that is like, even that will affect me so much that I have to kind of put it to one side. But after we spoke about this last time, just in person, I remember seeing an article a couple of days later where it's like there are the current heat waves that we're getting around the world are demonstrative.
Is that a word? Let's check the action replay.
Demonstrative. Demonstrative. Demonstrative.
I don't know. Oh, is that what you meant? Okay, I thought you meant demonstrative was like destructive.
Right. What did I mean to say?
Do you mean like demonstrate something?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Is that not a word?
Demonstrative?
I tried. Demonstrative.
I'm gonna say it's not a word.
Okay.
And let's
I'm gonna go with
find out in
it is a
post
word.
whether or not one of us is right.
Okay.
Right.
Either way. So what was it that was demonstrative?
The heat waves.
Yes, it is. It's showing us. It is demonstrating that there will be certain places that within a few years will be inhabitable, and it was like the uninhabitable. Thank you. It will be that there's this. He said like there's a damp something.
Wet bulb temperature.
Thank you. Wet bulb temperature, where it's like. And I experienced this living in Dubai, where it's like it's so hot, but it's also so humid that you can't sweat enough or drink enough water to not just die. Like obviously not in Dubai, but I've experienced something like that where the humidity is so high and the heat is so high that even though the temperature was 40 degrees. It said real feels 64, and it's like it's as if you are stood in 64 degree heat, and there's going to be places like that it's like that all the time, to the point where you just can't, nothing can live there. We can't live there, and then that provides like that is more like, oh, what do we do with all those people? Do they all die? Do they move? Then do the places that are habitable, do they become like grow more and become like overrun and stuff like that? So when I read that kind of thing, I was like, right, well, I at least want to feel like I'm doing something about it, or I'm at least finding out about it, so that I'm inevitably ready for whatever happens in a way. So I think it's like there might be solutions, it might not go that way, but knowing this information from you, someone who has the balls to read into it, it's like, to me, it was like, I'd at least like to know about it, in the same way that I'd like to know where my food came from before I eat it in a way, or before I decide to, will I eat that? Will I not? Should I buy Nikes? Because there's a little boy a little blind boy in India trying to make them for 20 pence a year. So should I do that? And this is the same thing. It's like, I want to at least know enough about it so it affects my life from then on. It might not go, I need to do something right now, but it's always in the back of my mind, and whenever I'm making decisions, like, should I have kids, it's there in the back of my mind going, yes, but what if this, and what if this, and what if this? But do you see a way where you could just do stand-up and kind of like go out guns blazing?
Yeah, so there really is, if you believe that things are going to go south and you accept it, then there's really two schools of thought, aren't there? Is it like you just live your best life now, and then whatever happens, you just get caught in the crossfire of whatever happens? Or do you make sacrifices now to increase your longevity afterwards. I think it's personal preference. If someone was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to live my best life 10 years, I'll be like, you do you, man. I'm deathly afraid of pain.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm like, I want to put myself in the best position where I don't have to like suffer needlessly. And also there's an element of that. My brother and sister they take it seriously, and they are glad that I'm hopefully going to be able to set myself up in a position where I'm quite resilient. But no one else in the family is doing it themselves. So I just feel like someone has to do it.
Yeah.
Someone in my close family friends has to do it, so that the people that I love have somewhere to go.
Right.
If we ever reach a point where food is really scarce.
True.
Or,
that's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
So,
I'm a lot more selfish than that, I think. Because my sister and her husband have this shit together. They have a nice house. They have 2 cars. Both SUVs. They have 2 kids. Both SUVs. No,
kids are little SUVs.
4x4s. One's called Discovery, one's called Range Rover. No, anyway, silly. They have that, and I'm always like, well, they've had kids. That's nice. I don't think I will. I enjoy having nieces and nephews, but they're kind of living a life of in the present or in the near future. Like, let's make sure that we get married in this time. Let's make sure that we get a house. Let's make sure we have kids. Right, we've had enough kids. Let's make sure they get to this school, and just living like that. Whereas they're not. Well, I don't know. I've not discussed this with them, but I wonder what they think about what the world will be like when their kids are their age, when they're in the 30s.
I think it's, no one really wants to think about it anyway because it's scary, but you have even less of a reason to think about it if, like, you're more of a reason to ignore it if you have children, because you have to think about them, and obviously you love kids more than you love yourself. Like, that's terrifying to me. Yeah, the idea that there exists someone in the world that I am more worried for their well-being than I am my own. Yeah. Considering how worried I am for my own well-being, it's like, more than this? But I'd be terrified.
Oh yeah, well, I was going to say, but then you wouldn't care about yourself anywhere near as much. But then it would be no longer, if you already worry so much about yourself, that's gone. But then it's double on these 2 little things that or 1 little thing, whatever, 8. How many kids you could have, Connor? But
so I'm not really surprised that someone in their position might be more like, hopefully, like, being a bit willfully ignorant about potential threats.
True, but your mindset, whereas mine is like, oh, they're doing that life, I'm going to do this one, where I might travel around different cities trying to perform to people, and one day die in a hotel in Toxteth when I'm 60. And that's okay. I would have enjoyed life. I don't know what the world would be like at that point, but I will have had a good run. Whereas they will carry on the family and all this stuff. Like, I've always looked at it like that. But you're kind of looking at it like they might have kids, or they might the family might continue with them, but I will be the safe haven for my family if something goes wrong, in a way. And I'm kind of going like, well, just me, I'll just keep going like that. Like, I'm not really considering, I'm not looking, even if I do have this information and if I do think it's going that way, I'm going like, well, you've made that decision to do that, I've made my decision to do this, whereas you're looking at like, you have a reason to go, I want to save my family in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of framing it that way to motivate me to finish it and to make it more meaningful for myself. I would want to do it anyway. Yeah. But if I have it in the back of my mind that it's like, oh, I could be the hero. It's almost egotistical, but it's like that is a bit of like fuel for the engine. Yeah.
And I wasn't saying that then anyone listening, I don't want them to think that I was going like that either of us are saying that you're going to be the hero of the family. I don't think but if there's even an element of like, what if I'm in my life, that's the thing I contribute to the family, then that's a good thing. That's a good motivation to help me do this, because you're not just thinking of yourself. You're not just thinking, oh, I'll be in a, like with the extreme of it, is like, I'll be in a bunker and I'll have tinned food and I'll be ready with a sniper rifle at the lookout. You're more like, I have a nice place, and I've been the one who learnt to grow food, so that if supermarkets don't have anything, they can come and get the potatoes off me and all that, and like, it's more of a selfless act than it is selfish. But the element of, I could be the one that helps the family and is a motivator.
Yeah,
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that there's any such thing as a selfless act.
Anyway. I know. As soon as I said it, I went, "There's no selfless act." I said it in my mind immediately.
Yeah. But selfishness is a valid motivation to do things to help other people. So I'm trying to use it, but I try to use this knowledge to affect my long-term decisions, but don't let it affect my day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's good.
So I don't want to sit in bed all day in the dark unless I'm enjoying it, which is, I mean, I quite love sitting in bed all day in the dark, but in a sad way. I don't do it in a sad way. Okay. And being like, oh, fuck, my future's screwed.
Someone put a light on.
But my big overarching choice is about, like, am I going to retrain? Like, where do I want to live? These are the sorts of things that are affecting by it. But how I treat other people or how I treat myself or whatever day-to-day minutia. I'm not looking at cars and being like, this fucking city is dirty and I'm the one to clean it up. I'm not like that.
Driver, like.
I'm not doing that. I'm trying to be like the same person I've always been, but just adjust the shit.
All this stuff. It's not quite like that. It's more like, I'm going to get myself in a position where I can, like, all right, let's do that. So in the next 5 years, in 2026, where are you?
Probably still at home.
Still at home, and you're saving up money, and you.
I don't have even close to enough money for a deposit on a house yet.
Yeah.
So
it's all towards getting your own place and getting some skills in. What are you training at?
Renewables engineer.
Okay.
And a lot of it is plumbing, and there's a bit of electrical work in it, and then there's installing renewables as well. So if I ever was in a position where I had a solar panel to power my house, then I would be the guy that knows how to fix and install the solar panel.
That's also your job?
Yeah. So I'm trying to align my job with skills that will be useful when I'm not on the job.
Right, okay.
If I don't have a job eventually because jobs cease to exist.
But then at least the job, the skill that you had in the job will now benefit you in life when there is no jobs, if that's the case.
So really, I'm retraining, and it's under the cover of being like, I want a new career. But deep down, I'm like, I need the knowledge.
Yeah, you're there like everyone else is like, I'm going to get promoted, and you're like, suckers.
Well, they're going to learn how to push pencils.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still out here learning the real stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the aim for now.
Undercover job, man. Haha, I have job. I am one of you with job. Yeah. So that's like so basically it's kind of a short-term plan where you're putting yourself in a position where you feel like comfortable, whatever happens, you're going to be in a position where you're like, I did what I could.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you don't know exactly what will happen. It does range from nothing happens at all and everything's fine to actually even what I'm doing isn't enough. The range is so wide, so I don't think I'll ever be sit and I'm like, okay, I'm fine now. Like nothing can touch me. For the reasons that we've stated so far, and then also global warming and biodiversity is pretty huge, and those like resource scarcity you look at and you're like, that might collapse the economy and we might suddenly have to change how we deal with supply chains, and the UK might have to grow more of its own food and whatnot. But for something like mass extinctions, you're like, this might threaten all life on Earth. I don't believe that we'll go extinct, at least not. I mean, eventually we will, but not in my lifetime. Yeah. But who knows? I mean, I know. Who knows what will happen? So I'll never sit back and be like, it's fine.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. But it's more like being equipped.
Yeah.
The Paris Agreement. The Treaty of Versailles.
Off camera, we had to explain to Phill what it was.
Yeah, I guessed that it would be that they make the Eiffel Tower bigger so we can finally reach another planet and live there. Do you think, first of all, before we get into that Elon Musk and a bunch of other guys are going to be soon living on Mars? All the rich billionaires. You don't think so?
No. And if they can live on Mars, they won't be able to do it. Like, it won't be useful to
There'll
us.
be like 8 of us.
It'll be like The Martian. There'll be a small
True.
colony. It'd be like, great. I mean, it's wonderful that we went to the moon, but it didn't do anything for us.
True. And as well, Jeff Bezos will get annoying quick if he's one of 8.
Yeah, God, imagine hanging out with Jeff Bezos.
You're like, just please take the rover over to the water supply, please. And he's like,
so I don't really believe, because I mean, space travel is so hard. I don't think it's easy to solve it by just throwing money at it.
Not easy. Hard 12 months I had trying to do that.
Yeah, God,
went into comedy instead.
Yeah.
But yes, the Paris Saint-Germain agreement.
Yeah.
What's all that, eh?
So, yeah. So, in case anyone doesn't know, although I'm surprised
maybe
that
just me.
It was a summit in 2016 where I think basically most countries, full stop, I don't know how many it was, met up and they're like, we're going to stop these emissions.
Yeah.
They looked at these certain models and it's like, if we do this, we can limit our warming of the earth to 1.5 to 2 degrees.
Right.
C.
And I remember Trump going, nah.
Yeah.
I remember that part of it.
So Trump left it and Biden rejoined it.
Yeah.
Although in practice, it doesn't actually make much of a difference. So
the agreement itself, or them.
Well, I mean, the agreement does, because the agreement isn't binding.
Right.
It does. If someone doesn't make their targets, nothing happens. And the evidence of this is that basically all the countries haven't met their targets and nothing has happened. America emissions globally continue to go up. We emit more now than we did. Well, yeah, last year. 2020 went down from 2019 because of Corona.
Yeah.
But it was like, boop, it was a tiny
little.
It was still way more than 2015.
Do you remember people being like, there are dolphins in the canal now. There's finally wildlife
nature's back.
Yeah. There was a cheetah in my back garden. Yeah. But it's like, they made it seem like that. But I was like, this will not last.
Yeah. So we have these targets that will supposedly limit warming to 1.5, 2 degrees C. It's important to note that if we hit 2 degrees C, we're likely to see things like 1 billion climate refugees. So that already is
a billion climate refugees.
Yeah, as in 1 billion people displaced by climate change, who then flood Europe, Russia, China.
I really am this dumb.
Yeah. You know what a refugee is?
I did, but I was like, wait, what's a climate refugee?
Yeah, it's just a refugee caused
I just imagine
by
loads of refugees on fire for some reason. What does that mean? What does that tell you about me?
I don't know.
But yeah, so they'll have to be relocated because of, I think I mentioned this earlier.
And
I actually said
the
it.
UN predicts that there will be 1 billion by 2050. So that's 29 years from now. You know, by comparison, I think the refugee crisis that we're currently dealing with from Syria is something like 100 to 200 million. Right. You have to check me on that, but it's nowhere near 1 billion. Yeah. And the stress it's put on mainland Europe is pretty apparent. And the rise of populism as a result has also been pretty apparent. So 1 billion would be huge. So we want to avoid 2 degrees. So we have these targets to avoid 2 degrees. We're not reaching the targets. Unfortunately, the targets themselves are also not enough. If we did reach them, we would still pass 2 degrees by 2050.
Yeah, I remember talking about this recently and going like, I didn't know what it was about, but I remember saying to Nick, like, I've heard that even if we're at a point where we try and do the thing, it's still kind of too late anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit apprehensive around the term "not too late" because it's like, if we stopped emissions now, it would be better than if we continue to emit. Yeah. So it's like there's always something.
There's something to do. Yeah.
But the day of like, if we fix everything, we won't ever see climate change is obviously gone because we had heat waves last week in US and Canada that killed people. Yeah. So climate change is here. Yeah. And it's just going to get worse.
True.
So the reason why the targets aren't enough is because there are positive feedbacks that aren't included in the models, and most notably permafrost in the Arctic Circle.
Right.
So there's frost in the Arctic Circle that remains frozen all year round, and locked underneath it is methane. And methane is a very bad greenhouse gas. It's something 20 to 80 times worse than CO2.
The one that's in a fart.
Yes, I believe.
Continue.
I think so. Continue. So methane's really bad. It lasts in the atmosphere for about 20, 30 years, and then it breaks down into CO2 and water vapor. So it doesn't even really go away. It just turns into something else that's bad. And as the planet heats up, the line where this soil above this stays frozen all year and soil below this is thaws during the summer, gets higher and higher.
And that's the water levels, right?
Yeah. No. I imagine that the frost melting and going into the ocean probably does contribute a little bit to sea rise.
Thank you for helping me out.
But what the worry is that methane is being released from the soil. Right. So it's like Earth is emitting its own greenhouse gases without us even doing anything. I see. Right. And at the moment, it's not that much.
Remember, monsters' food.
Yeah. So the monster is being a monster on its own. Without us
okay.
ordering it to do stuff.
The monster's burping out its own badness. Yeah, okay.
So at the moment, it's not that much. I think in 2017, it was something like 17 million tons of methane in a year. By comparison, we emit something like 600 million. So it's like a fraction of what we emit. But in the late noughties, it was
still contributing to it, though.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But in the late noughties, it was like 3.6 billion. Wow. And in the 90s, it was like 500,000. So again, we have this exponential curve. Yeah. So who knows how much? I mean, there's enough under there. There's like trillions of tons of methane underneath the ocean and in the permafrost. So we might find that 10 years, 20 years, a third of our methane emissions are by accident. The Earth is just doing it, and then that makes the Earth hotter, and then it makes more permafrost thaw, and then so on and so on.
So even if we go like, right, come on, everyone drink out of plastic straws and ride your bike to work. Wait, not plastic straws, thank you. Cardboard straws. Not that is important at all. Ride your bikes everywhere. Stop being crazy. The Earth will go like, you're too late. You've done it. Not too late, but it'll be like, You've made me create this already.
That's why we get this term hothouse Earth, where you get a runaway greenhouse gas. It won't necessarily get to like Venus, but all it takes is for it to get to these 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees for it to really start putting stress on us. And the climate models that were used for the Paris Agreement don't include the permafrost. They like, imagine it's not even there. And you have to hit these targets to limit 2 degrees. So it's like the targets are on easy mode, and we're not even doing that. Not only that, but we don't even show signs of slowing down growth. I mean, we're doing more.
True.
We're not even stagnating emissions. So the chances of us limiting, I mean, we're at 1.2, 1.3 now. Okay. The chances of us above pre-industrial levels, a bunch of us like limiting it to 2 degrees are, I think, basically non-existent at this point. Okay. Saying that, there's a huge difference between 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So that's not an excuse to be like, well, it's too late now because there's a billion. It's the difference between a billion climate refugees and 3 billion climate refugees. Like, it's worth putting in the effort.
It's just like if you want. Within the next couple of decades, there'll be certain places where we go, can't have people there anymore, stick them over here, and that's a problem. That's just something that's quite a good one to bring out of all of this. I think that if people aren't concerned about climate change and they're worried, they're like, that's so far away that it's not even a big deal. I'll be 80 before the world, the sun burns the entire Earth and all the bees are dead and stuff like that. A good one to take away is like within by 2050, 29 years away, there'll be 1 billion climate refugees. I know what that is now, and they'll move to countries. And if you're already like, keep them out, like, if you're already a bit of a racist, then you should be like, racists should be at the top of the climate thing. They're like, I don't want, I don't want John from Syria to come into my country right now. Well, you should be worried about. Jack from Canada, because it's inhabitable there soon. So
it's important to remember that the 1 billion number comes from the UN, who made the targets that aren't enough. Right. So 1 billion might be an underestimate of what we'll see.
True.
And it's also not going to be like 2049 everything's fine and then 2050 happens.
Oh yeah.
And suddenly everyone's displaced.
Yeah, it's like slowly making its way to that.
So whenever I sound doomery to people, I think people are like, oh, what? Like, there's going to be a day where suddenly you're fighting off cannibals. Where it's like, it's more that there's a steady decline where there's more and more stress on the system, and there's less and less resources to deal with the problems.
Yeah, and there are. I imagine there's like you could probably list a couple of things that are evident right now. Not that we have to go into that too much, but there's probably a lot of things where you're like, remember when you could do that? You can't do that anymore. Like that. And that's already evidence of it happening. And if we look back on this podcast in 20 years, there's a good chance that you might have been like, yep, see, that might that
remember
happened.
When
and
the ice caps were there?
Yeah.
Right.
And, remember when Scotland was still not under the sea?
I don't know what Scotland's deal. I know that East Anglia is in danger as far as sea rise is concerned.
Okay.
Which is why if I did move into a house, I probably wouldn't move to anywhere where I live currently.
Right.
Probably come here because the UK is actually tipping.
Wow.
So seas are rising. But
is that what the show Tipping Point's about?
No.
No. Okay. That one wasn't real.
Just a heads up.
Yeah.
But
just an hour-long documentary about how the England's tipping. People are like, why do we watch this every week?
Yeah, it's almost like a table. I don't know the exact ins and outs, but I know that the southeast is sinking and the northwest is rising.
The northwest is rising.
So good for you guys.
Yes, the northwest rises.
Yeah.
That's all I've taken out of this, to be honest, that the northwest rises. Yeah, but have you seen any good comedy films lately? Imagine if we just went to from it.
Sorry.
We've talked ad nauseum. See, I know stuff.
Yeah.
Ad nauseum. I might have said demonstrative. No, that was right that time. Who knows? We will find out in post. But is there anything you feel like, by the way, that we've kind of brushed over that you would want to?
There's loads.
There's loads that you could go into, but it's the stuff that
would.
But is there anything
truly explain, because I feel like we've only just touched the
surface, of course. But I think it is enough to go like. All I wanted really to do is like be more aware of it and just have somewhere where if people watch this for whatever reason they watch this for them to even consider it, because I don't think you've come across in any way as like someone going everything's going wrong at all. You've always, every time you've brought across a point that's like we're in danger here, you're like, well, also if we did this or there's a solution you could do yourself, or maybe you should consider this. It's never been a preachy thing. It's more like, and it is mad that even, it's actually crazy that for you to go, hey everyone, and you don't even do that, but to just go like, if someone asks you about it, to go, well, I've been reading into it and we're in a bit of trouble, for someone to go crazy. That's mad that we've gotten to the point where people who are trying to just go, should we not be a bit more concerned about things rather than how much the Yeezys cost? Like we should be worried about this thing, like that you are called crazy for that.
Yeah, like, I think we're all kind of assuming that everything will just keep getting better and better and
exactly,
better. Exactly,
yeah. So I wanted to kind of discuss it with you because I know that you're not this like guy just I think that everything's going wrong. You're not this pessimist, and it's like and I wanted to discuss it with you because it's something that I'd already had been thinking about, and I thought that we could talk about it in like a proactive way, in a way like where it's, rather than being doom and gloom about it, it's just more of an awareness kind of thing for myself and for anyone listening.
Yeah, I hope that if anyone does listen, that they realize that my intention is not to say that we're all fucked, so give up. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That is not my position at all. And I think that if anything, this should be a catalyst for living your life more actively and less passively. And at most, I mean, I would love if people took preparing a little bit more seriously, even if it's just like keeping a cupboard in your house that has some tinned food in it, or like maybe having, you can get these big huge jugs, I guess, like canisters, I guess, of drinking water, and like small things that you don't even need to really put yourself out that far to get, that can become useful in a time of need. Because I mean, if you look at just this last year, you know, Texas had that huge freeze, and then the electrical grid went down. I mean, people were dying in America because they didn't have electricity and it was very cold. And, you know,
that's one of those things where it's like, that's an example of it happening right now.
Yeah. And, you know, arguably that was because of the slowing of the currents in the Atlantic. And, you know, maybe some needless deaths or needless suffering can be avoided if we're all a little bit more mindful
100%.
And prepare in ways that aren't necessarily buying a gun and ammo and building a bunker underneath your house.
And also it makes, I'm hoping that anyone listening who feels kind of wasteful, like quite wasteful. By wasteful I mean just they buy things that are just they don't need and that kind of thing. I try to avoid doing that, but yeah, just be less like that. Be more mindful of the fact that you should be kind of, like you said, equipped or prepared, and that, I don't know, anyone listening and they're like, what can I even do about climate change and stuff? It's like, just if you start with you just trying to be more, if you're more aware of the fact that there are things like that in Texas and there are things that are happening right now that are evidence of in the future, it will just keep going if we keep going this way, and people are wondering what they can do. And it's like, I think just to even start, if you even have listened and thought like, oh, it does seem like quite serious, then there's little things you could do. Just be more mindful and be less wasteful and stuff before you even scratch the surface of like, what can we do on a global level? I almost wanted to say at the end, like, so what's the answer then? But like, or not even like that, but just like, what can we do? But I think it's just like you said, it's like we're just making small decisions, like you said, be prepared in your house that you have, or what I'm taking from it is like, be just more wary of the damage that we're doing and try and see what you can do. Start with the man in the mirror, as that famous Peter Phill said. So that's where I take most of my advice.
A good example, it's a good opportunity as well to remember that the people that you're dealing with every day will likely have to go through a lot of the hardships that we're all dealing with. So if you're in a situation where, say, you're yelling at a guy for cutting you off in traffic, or someone's taking too long at the self-checkout or whatever, and you're like huffing and puffing, and I'm just feeling really hard done by, you hate this man.
I get
you
that.
Don't even know, you don't know his wants or dreams or fears or anything. If you can be mindful of the fact that we're all in this big struggle together, and we're all about to deal with a lot of these issues together, maybe we can all be a little bit kinder to each other.
True. Because if we struggle to even decide on simple things like whether or not just race issues and gender issues, then like that's worrying. It should be like, let's all, like you said, just be more mindful of other people are in a similar situation, are going to be in a similar situation to you in the future, with what, in regards to what happens. Yeah, and like you said, just be a little nice to each other and just be more mindful of things.
Yeah. I would hope that if things do get bad, we have an experience where we all lock arms and just be like, rather like we deal with it as a family, rather than like, get him, like, and everyone's just fighting each other.
True. I'd like to think that, but all the post-apocalyptic films say otherwise.
Yeah. Well, you can still dream that compassion would win out in the end.
You can still dream. I think that is a good warm-up, that. Like, do you reckon we should get started now? What do you think?
Well, I've just barely begun.
Right, we'll turn the cameras on now. We'll actually start the podcast now. What do you think, man?
Yeah.
Is there anything you like? Because I feel all of that, most of that was just like patter and like just a bit of banter about climate stuff. But I think we should really get started with the real stuff now.